The woman in the black dress walked straight up to my husband's casket, leaned down, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "I'll take care of everything now, baby." I was standing 6 feet away, his wife of 31 years, and I had never seen this woman's face in my life. But here's what she didn't know. 3 weeks before Richard died, he made one phone call to me, and what he told me sent me to a lawyer's office on Braddock Avenue with a shoebox full of documents I'd been sitting on like a loaded weapon. So when that woman and her 2 grown sons showed up at the reading of the will expecting to collect on a 4-bedroom house, a pension, and $340,000 in life insurance, I slid one single envelope across the table, and the sound that came out of her mouth when she opened it is something I will hear for the rest of my life. Before I tell you how all of that happened, I want to ask you something real quick. If you're watching this right now, drop it to comment and tell me where you're listening from. I read every single one, and if this story hits you the way I think it will, go ahead and tap that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. My name is Margaret Colson. Most people call me Maggie. I'm 63 years old, born and raised in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, worked 26 years in the cafeteria at Westmont Hilltop Middle School. Hairnets, lunch trays, mashed potatoes from a 5-gallon pot. That was my life and I loved every minute of it. I retired in 2021 with a small pension and a Medicare card, and I thought that was the whole story. I thought wrong. I met Richard at a fish fry at St. Benedict's Church in the spring of 1993. He was wearing a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and he had grease under his fingernails that soap couldn't touch. He drove long haul for a freight company out of Altoona. 30-foot trailers, 6 days on the road, 1 day home. That was the deal. I knew it when I married him in June of 1994, and I never once complained. You don't complain about a man who comes home every Sunday morning, kisses your forehead, and hands you an envelope with $1,100 cash in it. That was Richard. Reliable, quiet, steady as concrete. Tile in the bathroom, every squeaky board on the porch, 30 years of paychecks pressed into that foundation. Our daughters, Sarah and Colleen, they grew up good. Sarah's a dental hygienist in Greensburg. Colleen teaches 2nd grade in Somerset. They gave us 4 grandchildren between them. Those Sunday dinners around my kitchen table were the best hours of my week. Richard would sit at the head, barely talking, just watching the noise with this half smile he had. I thought he was content. I thought he was present. Looking back now, I wonder how many of those Sundays his mind was 2 hours east in Harrisburg. Richard retired at 59 because his lower back finally gave out. Years of loading docks and highway vibration. He was home full-time after 2020, and honestly, it was the first time we'd lived like a normal married couple. Breakfast together. 7. Walking the dog past the elementary school and back. I thought we were finally getting our reward. Then in January of last year, he started losing weight fast. His skin went yellow in February. Pancreatic cancer stage 4. Doctor at Conemaugh Memorial told us 11 weeks was optimistic. He was right. Richard was gone by April 3rd. I was there every night. Every single night in that hospice room on the 2nd floor. I held his hand when it was warm, and I held it when it turned cold. I told him I loved him until the words didn't mean anything anymore because I'd said them so many times. And he told me he loved me back. But 3 weeks before the end, when he was still lucid, still sharp behind the eyes, he asked the nurses to leave the room. He looked at me with something I'd never seen on his face. It wasn't pain, it was shame. He said, "Maggie, there's something I need to tell you, and I'm sorry for all of it." He gave me a name, Denise Watkins, Harrisburg. Me to go to the safety deposit box at First Keystone on 5th Street. He said everything I needed was in there. I held his hand, and I nodded, but I didn't go, not yet. I thought it was the morphine talking. I thought his mind was slipping loose from reality. The way the doctors warned it might. I told myself it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. And the proof of that: walked into his funeral wearing a black dress I'd never seen. Kissed my husband's dead. Mow, 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 mow. Brown eyes staring straight at me across the casket like I was the stranger in the room. I didn't make a scene. I want you to understand that. I stood there in that funeral home with my daughters on either side of me, and I watched this woman, this stranger, press her lips to my husband's forehead like it was the most natural thing in the world. My hands were shaking, but my face was stone. 31 years of marriage teaches you how to hold yourself together when everything inside you is screaming. Her name was Denise Watkins. I didn't know that yet, not officially, but I remembered the name Richard whispered in that hospice room, and now here she was. Flesh and blood, 48 years old, maybe younger, tall, put together, wearing grief like a costume. She'd rehearsed in the mirror that morning. The two men with her, Tyler and Marcus, I'd learn later. They stood behind her like bodyguards, mid-20s, broad shoulders, and those faces? God, those faces. Richard's jawline, Richard's deep-set eyes, Richard's exact way of standing with his weight, shifted to the left. I felt like I was looking at ghosts wearing my husband's skin. After the burial, we had a small reception at the VFW Hall on Cypress Street. Cold cuts, folding chairs, coffee and styrofoam cups. I was standing by the dessert table when she walked up to me. Just walked right up like we were old friends. She extended her hand and said, "Margaret, I'm Denise. I think Richard would have wanted us to meet under better circumstances." I didn't take her hand. I just looked at it. She pulled it back slow and smiled, not cruel, not warm, just calculated, and said, "We deserve to grieve, too. He was part of our lives for 14 years. 14 years. The number hit me like a fist in the chest. 14 years meant this started in 2011. My girls were still in high school in 2011. I was packing Richard's lunches in brown paper bags in 2011. I was sleeping alone 5 nights a week, trusting that man with every molecule of faith I had in my body. 14 years. Sarah grabbed my arm and pulled me away. Colleen was already crying. We left the reception 20 minutes later. I didn't eat. I didn't speak the entire drive home. 1 week passed. 7 days of me sitting in that kitchen on Maple Crest Lane staring at Richard's empty chair, trying to figure out how a man lives 2 lives for 14 years without a single crack showing. Then the letter arrived. Certified mail. Return. Address, Harwick and Pratt Associates, Attorneys at Law, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Denise was filing a claim against Richard's estate. Her lawyer stated she was Richard's domestic partner of 14 years. That Richard had verbally promised her the life insurance payout. That he had co-signed a lease for an apartment on Front Street in Harrisburg in 2011. That Tyler and Marcus were his biological sons and therefore entitled to an equitable share of his inheritance. They wanted the life insurance. They wanted a portion of the house value. They wanted his pension survivor benefits. They wanted everything I had spent 31 years building with my bare hands. I called. "Sarah," she screamed into the phone. I called Colleen. She went so quiet I thought the line went dead. Then it got worse. Denise started posting on Facebook photos of her and Richard, him smiling, relaxed, wearing a polo shirt I didn't recognize. Captions like "missing my partner in 14 beautiful years." People started calling me neighbors. Women from a church, Richard's cousin in Ebensburg, everyone asking the same thing. "Maggie, did you know?" No, I didn't know. I didn't know a damn thing. Her lawyer sent a follow-up letter the next week, more aggressive this time, requesting formal mediation over the house deed, using phrases like equitable distribution and good faith negotiation. As if I owed that woman good faith. As if she hadn't built her entire claim on the back of my husband's lies. I sat at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning, 3 weeks after the funeral, and I thought about giving up. I thought about writing a check and making it all disappear. Let her have the money. Let her have whatever she wanted. I was 63 years old, exhausted down to my bones. And the man I loved had made a fool of me in front of everyone I'd ever known. What was the point of fighting? I sat there for a long time. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. Richard's coffee mug was still on the second shelf. His boots were still by the back door. And then I remembered the safety deposit box. First Keystone, 5th Street. I hadn't gone. I'd told myself it was morphine talk. I told myself it was nothing. But Richard's face that night, that look, that wasn't pain but shame. That was the face of a man trying to hand his wife a weapon before he died. I just hadn't picked it up yet. The next morning, I put on my coat, got in my car, and drove to the bank. The woman at First Keystone didn't ask questions. I showed my ID, signed the card, and she walked me back to the vault room. Box, number 114, small, metal, cold under my fingers. I carried it to the private table and sat down alone under that fluorescent light. And I opened it like I was pulling a pin from a grenade. Inside was a manila envelope, thick, heavy. Richard's handwriting on the front, just one word, Maggie. I opened it with my thumbnail and everything spilled out onto the table. Bank statements, printed emails, a notarized letter dated 5 weeks before his death, and one single document that made my hands go still. The notarized letter was written in Richard's voice, clear, calm, confessional. He admitted to the affair 14 years, Denise Watkins, an apartment on Front Street in Harrisburg that he paid $1.450 a month for, drawn from a separate checking account at PNC that I never knew existed. He admitted to Tyler and Marcus, though he wrote, and I'll never forget this line, I never confirmed paternity through any legal test and Denise never pursued one. But here's what mattered. Here's what changed everything. Attached to that letter was a signed document from 2019, a legal waiver. Denise Watkins had signed it, notarized, witnessed, dated August 14, 2019, explicitly acknowledging that she had no claim to Richard's marital assets, his life insurance, his pension, or the house on Maplecrest Lane. She signed it willingly. In exchange, Richard had paid her a lump sum of $40,000 in cash. There was a receipt. There was a bank withdrawal record. There was her signature on every page. She knew. She'd known since 2019 that she had no legal right to a single dime, and she came to that funeral anyway. She filed that claim anyway. She hired a lawyer and sent me certified letters anyway, because she thought Richard was dead and the evidence was buried with him. But Richard gave it to me, the last honest thing he ever did. I drove straight to Pittsburgh, 47 minutes on Route 22 with that envelope on the passenger seat like a living thing. Didn't have a lawyer. I'd never needed one in 63 years of life, but my pastor, Father Nowak at St. Casimir's, had given me a name 2 days after the funeral. Ellen Dvorak, estate attorney. Office on Braddock Avenue in a brick building above a dry cleaner. I walked in without an appointment. The receptionist told me Ms. Dvorak was booked through Thursday. I put the envelope on the counter and said, "Tell her it's about fraud." I was sitting in Ellen's office 14 minutes later. Ellen was maybe 50, short hair, reading glasses on a chain. She spread those documents across her desk like a surgeon examining X-rays. She read the waiver 3 times. Then she looked up at me and said, "Mistress Coulson, this woman has no case. None but what she's done filing a claim she knows is fraudulent. That's criminal." Ellen didn't waste time. She brought in a private investigator named Frank Moretti, licensed out of Greensburg. 61 years. Old ex-state police, looked like someone's uncle but moved like a man who'd spent 40 years finding people who didn't want to be found. Within 2 weeks, Frank came back with everything. Denise Watkins had done this before. In 2017, she targeted an elderly widower in Lancaster County. A retired electrician named Howard Phelps filed a similar claim against his estate after he died of a stroke, called herself his partner, demanded insurance money. That case was settled out of court because Howard's family didn't have the resources to fight. She walked away with $55,000. Frank found the court records. He found the settlement agreement. He found a prior fraud conviction from 2014, a check-kiting scheme in Dauphin County that had been expunged but was still recoverable through the right channels. This wasn't grief, this was a business. And I was her next target. Ellen filed a paternity challenge, demanded DNA evidence that Tyler and Marcus were Richard's biological children. Denise's attorney, a man named Harwick, went completely silent. 9 days, no response, no counterfiling, nothing. Ellen smiled when she told me. She said, "When the other side goes quiet, it means they're looking for the exit." But I didn't want them to find an exit. I wanted them to walk into a room thinking they'd won and find out they'd lost everything. Ellen understood. She arranged a formal estate mediation session at her office, sent the invitation on official letterhead. Professional, polite. She invited Denise and her attorney, my daughters, and a certified court reporter. The date was set for May 19th, a Tuesday, 10 o'clock in the morning. The night before, I sat at my kitchen table and put one envelope in my purse. Inside, Denise's signed 2019 waiver, Frank Moretti's full investigative report, the Lancaster County settlement, the prior fraud conviction, and a prepared criminal referral letter, addressed to the Cambria County District Attorney's Office, ready for Ellen's signature. I slept 7 hours straight that night. First time since Richard died. I woke up at 6, made coffee, fed the dog, and put on the same black dress I wore to the funeral. It felt right. I was burying something that day too. Ellen's office smelled like old paper and fresh coffee. The conference room had a long walnut table, 8 chairs, and a window that looked out onto Braddock Avenue where the morning traffic was already crawling. I arrived at 9:30. Sarah and Colleen were already there, sitting side by side, holding hands under the table like they used to do as little girls during thunderstorms. The court reporter set up her machine in the corner. Ellen arranged her files in a single neat stack. Nobody spoke. Denise arrived at 10:05. 5 minutes late. On purpose, I'm sure. She walked in wearing a navy blazer and gold earrings, chin up, shoulders back, looking like a woman who'd already spent the money in her head. Tyler was with her. Marcus wasn't. I never learned why. Her attorney, Harwick, was a thin man in a gray suit who wouldn't make eye contact with anyone. He shook Ellen's hand too quickly and sat down before being offered a chair. Harwick opened. He spoke for 4 minutes. I counted. He used words like equitable, moral obligation, the decedent's intent, and good faith resolution. He proposed that Denise receive $170,000 from the life insurance policy, roughly half plus what he called an equitable share of the home's appraised value. He said Tyler and Marcus deserved recognition as Richard's sons. He said this could all be handled quietly, respectfully, without courts. He said the word family 3 times. When he finished, he looked at Ellen. Ellen looked at me, and I didn't speak. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the envelope. Plain white, no writing on the outside. I slid it across the table slow, steady, the way you'd push a glass of water towards someone who's choking. It stopped right in front of Denise's hands. She looked at it, looked at me, almost smiled, like she thought it was a settlement offer. She opened the flap and pulled out the first page, the 2019 waiver. Her signature at the bottom, notarized, witnessed, dated. I watched her eyes move across the words and I watched the color leave her face like someone had pulled a plug at the base of her neck. White. Absolutely white. She flipped to the second page. Frank Moretti's report, Lancaster County. Howard Phelps, the $55,000 she stole from a dead man's family. Her hands started shaking. She flipped to the third page. The 2014 fraud conviction, the criminal referral letter to the DA. She dropped the papers on the table like they were on fire. Tyler grabbed the pages, read them, stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. He walked out without a word, didn't look at his mother, didn't look at anyone. Just gone. Denise started crying. Then she started talking fast, desperate, her voice cracking. That waiver was signed under duress. Richard pressured me. I didn't understand what I was signing. You can't use this. She looked at Harwick. Harwick was already closing his briefcase. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and said 5 words I'll remember forever. I'm withdrawing from this matter. Then he looked at Ellen and said, newly discovered information inconsistent with my client's representations. And he walked right out the door. Left Denise sitting there alone. She turned to me, tears running down her face, mascara streaking. She said, Maggie, please, I have nothing. He promised me. I held up one hand, just one hand, and she stopped. I said the only thing I needed to say. You signed it, Denise. You took the $40,000. You knew? I picked up my purse and I walked out of that room. Sarah and Colleen followed. I could hear Denise sobbing behind me all the way down the stairwell. 6 weeks later, the Cambria County DA filed charges. Fraud, attempted theft by deception, perjury for the false affidavit she submitted claiming no prior waiver existed. Denise took a plea in September. 18 months in county. $14,500 in restitution. 5 years probation. Tyler and Marcus were never charged. I heard through Frank that Tyler cut off contact with his mother entirely. I don't know where Marcus ended up. I kept everything. The house, the pension, the $340,000 in life insurance. I used some of it to take Sarah, Colleen, and all 4 grandkids to Myrtle Beach for a week in October. Richard always said he'd take us. Never did. I sat on that beach with my feet in the sand and I let the waves come in and I didn't think about him. Not once. That whole week belonged to me. I'm back on Maple Crest Lane now. Same porch, same creaky board by the steps. Richard's truck is still in the driveway. I'll sell it eventually. Not yet. I don't hate him. I tried to those first few weeks, but hate is heavy and I'm too old to carry things that don't serve me. He was a flawed man who did a cowardly thing for 14 years and then, at the very end, handed me the one tool I needed to protect myself. That doesn't earn forgiveness, but it earns acknowledgement. He didn't leave me defenseless. That counts for something. I learned one thing through all of this. Quiet doesn't mean weak, still doesn't mean stupid. And the woman sitting calmly at the end of the table, the one everyone underestimates. She might just be the one holding the sharpest envelope in the room. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment. Tell me if you've ever been underestimated. Hit that like button if you felt something. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, and I'll see you in the next episode.